All right. Hey, everybody. It's the Sort of Okay show about horses, which I think we need to get hats and shirts made that say that because I think it's a great title. And I'm Kyle, and to my side here is Buck.
Hi.
So we're doing a sort of a special show tonight because it's only going to revolve around one topic, and that is the arbitration that Jessica Phoenix went through for the Canadian team to earn her spot back on the Olympic team or earn her spot on the Olympic team. We thought it was worth talking about because all the paperwork came out, so it's no longer conjecture or rumor. It's all factual and written down and covered. And because of that, it's really newsworthy, and we are trying to unfortunately cover as many things as possible, but I think it's a topic that is interesting from many different perspectives. So we're going to run through it. What do you think, Buck? Did you read all that paperwork?
I'm not much of a reader, but I'm a great listener, and you're a great talker. So I can't wait to hear what you have to say, and I'm going to just keep pushing you on, and I can't wait to see where this goes.
Yeah, great. Perfect. So I'll be looking for a new country by the end of this show, probably. I did have an offer from a South American country a couple of weeks ago when they looked at what was going on, but I told them to do that they'd actually have to pay me. But anyways,
forget it. Maybe they'll call Buck.
So, all right. Well, look, the first thing, obviously, I had heard rumors about what had gone on in the background, and it's a matter of one people's words against each other. But it is pretty much I think the biggest topic in there when you look at it is the reason coaches shouldn't be selectors, because when the personality of the coach gets involved and the passion of the coach gets involved, good or bad, you don't want them influencing the selectors unduly, and you certainly don't want them making decisions, because in that scenario, they're going to be the strongest voice in a selection panel, I think. And then I think as well, you have a relationship as a coach and rider that you have to have trust. You have to be able to say something forcefully, and then you have to be able to realize you can say it and you don't have to act upon it beyond there. And I think obviously in this situation, when you read the documents, Clayton really overstepped his bounds in there. He said exactly what he thought as a coach, which there's nothing wrong with that, but then took it further and tried to keep Jessica off the team because he didn't feel he was being respected or listened to enough in his role as a coach. And because of that, he didn't think she deserved to be on the team and help make that decision. And I think that was, that's obviously I felt it was uncalled for and over the line. And then an arbitrator came in and really much stronger than that said the same thing.
Right. Well, I think in professional sports, they have the front office, the GMs, the scouts, and it sort of separates the coach, so the coach can actually just coach on a day-to-day basis and not have to worry about if this player's happy or if he's, if his contract is right or whatever. And I think that in our sport, it's all, the coach is obviously going to have a say in, who's going well or whatever, but I think it's definitely advantageous to the team to have the coach separate from actually picking his team. And I think the Canadian situation is a great example of that. And even if, there wasn't all the drama, if, let's say, I was left off, then, came on, do you then feel like, well, Clayton really didn't want me or whatever? And I think that it's easier for the coach, and it's also easier for the player to have somebody else sort of say, all right, this is your team, here you go, take it and go with it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that's the first thing you see as being a problem. I wouldn't have expected it to explode quite as strongly or as quickly as it has here. I felt like it was probably a risk of being left off the Olympic team and then being put on the World Championship team and still having a little chip on your shoulder. But I don't know how your relationship can go forward well when you're not going to feel the trust, especially when you do read, like, the arbitrator said in one part of it, that Clayton, when he made his decision at Bromont and he didn't feel he was being listened to, he became a man on a mission, and that in the end he lost it. And that's never, you get God, I am certainly not, I will get worked up and I will say what I think, but you have to be able to step back afterwards and go, okay, wait, was that wrong? Sometimes it's a clearing a head moment, and not make a point of the whole thing. And I do, like last year, and I know this is, I'm not trying to reference me in there, but last year I got left off for the Pan Ams with a very good performance. And at the time I was told by a bunch of people to do what Jesse did and fight it. Now looking back on it, maybe if I had, this situation wouldn't have arisen this year. But what concerned me was being in the environment with my horse afterwards, after forcing my way in there, that it's very easy to also, if you're going to hold a grudge, make someone pay pretty well for it. And I just didn't feel comfortable putting myself in that situation. And especially, I don't mind me. Go ahead and do whatever you want to me. But, when you're bringing a horse in, you have to be a bit careful with how you do it, because there's a lot of things you can do. And I did have that conversation with multiple people and said I didn't feel comfortable doing it. And I got to say, I don't regret in the end. I regret it at the time. I fought with myself for quite a while about it, but I don't regret it all, because I think as it plays out, that what I felt was going to be a problem and was a concern will hold true. And if you guys out there feel like I'm, just, talking out my butt, that's fine. But I think when you're done and we look back on this, you end up seeing this problem that came up was very easy to predict. And I had a conversation last year about it. I think all of these things are very easy to foresee if you are a student of the game and watch sport through this and watch the different programs and see how different programs are run, see how they might work in action in one country and not another, and those sorts of things. But to do that, you really have to actually care enough. And one of the things that struck me as remarkable was in the arbitration, and I hate to lay it all at Clayton's door, but it ended up going to and being laid at his door. But in the arbitration, he said he had grave concerns about Jesse's horses being fit enough through the spring, and at Jersey he felt they weren't fit enough or something like that. And her horses ran very well at Jersey, so it's kind of an odd thing to say. But then the arbitrator asked him, "Did you look at the vet results after the exams and vet results after the competition? Had you looked at them before the selection proceeding?" No, he hadn't. Well, how do you have a concern and then not actually act on it? I have concerns like that. When my kids come for Young Rider Camp, I have them gallop. I never take heart rates on my horses because I know pretty much my baselines. I've used heart rate monitors. I'm not saying I'm opposed to it. I take all the heart rates on those 1-star and 2-star kids because I want to know what I might be dealing with in the future. And once in a while, you get an alarming result. That's just gathering information so that then you can actually move forward from it, because that is your profession. It's not just about teaching the lesson. It's about creating strength in a program. And that's sort of what I thought was odd, that it was like I'd made my mind up, and at that point, I wasn't looking for information that would help me, either justify it or not, but I'd already made my mind up, and my mind was right. So how could I question it? And I think that's an odd sort of mindset to have.
Yeah, this whole thing that's going on with Canada, I think it's just sort of almost coming to a head. I rode at the Royal last year, and, I'm not sort of privy to everything that goes on, but you hear things, and where there's smoke, there's usually fire. And I heard about the problems that they were having with some of the players and some of the coaches and that stuff. And I find it fairly interesting that the players that I heard that had the issues were nowhere to be found when it was time for the Olympics. And I don't know if that's just coincidence, or if that's good information or bad information, or if it's something really scary that I get why you did what you did and said, what, I'd rather not be part of this, because as someone from the outside looking in, it looks a little fishy.
Yeah, and now to be clear, and because I don't want people out there thinking that I did pull my involvement in the last because I wasn't happy with the way things were being handled. It wasn't on Clayton's end actually at all. It was I didn't think it was being handled professionally enough, and that is a criticism that I'll stand by. I told them that. I told them why I wanted my horses pulled. That said, it was not a difficult decision to make because it's not like I was like, oh, I'm on the team and I pulled my horse. So I don't want people thinking, oh, well, Kyle was so noble. It would have been a hard thing to do to make that decision if I was further up that list. But it didn't make me, all spring, I was doing my horses, my decisions. I wasn't really factoring in so much what was desired by the team because it wasn't a participation I was particularly enamored with. So, and that's personal decision. It is the Olympics. It's a pretty big deal, but my favorite horse for that spot, I lost him last year. I thought that was the one I was developing for it, so I took a chance with the younger horses to get them in there. I didn't think it was looking as promising as I needed it to look to make that team. And then my older horse, like after Rolex, someone said to me, oh, well, that's it. You'll be at the Olympics. You'll get it all, get it more sorted out. And I was like, they won't look at him. And I said, they guarantee you won't even see his face in there. And they were like, it was someone that was, fairly knew pretty well what the sport. And I just said, there's just not a chance of it. So me pulling out wasn't like a, huge difficult decision. But I will say, and I'm going to say it right now, I've thought about it long and hard. I've considered switching and becoming American because the support's better, the program's much better. When we went to England with my American rider and did badminton, I was like, I said when I came home, I was like, I can't believe I forgot what a professional program was run like. And that's just the reality of it. And everything was so taken care of and so well organized and orchestrated. And so because of that, and because, the opportunities are certainly greater for the horses to be owned or be in America, there's chance of trips and grants to go overseas, those sorts of things. So I've struggled with it. I've been, I'm Canadian at heart, but I was really struggling with that idea of potentially switching and giving a shot at it. I think I've got some good enough horses to do that and at least be in some contention. But I will say this, that decision I have yet to make. But I will say this without a question, this program continues. I am not involved in this team until this program changes, until there's major change in the structure, in the people involved. I have no interest in participating. And I think that looking 2 years down the road, my horses would be very, very viable candidates for the Worlds. And if they keep going well, and then for the next Olympics and the Pan Am cycle, I've got a very good string of horses. I will not put them in this. I will not participate at all. And that's as a rider and as an owner of horses, I don't want to do that. And I wonder how many other owners are going to feel the same way, where they're like, I don't want my horse to go into that because it's not fair handling and then it's not handled well. And I hope that's not, when I put that out there, I hope that's not like, oh, it's just bitter. I just don't want to be into something. And I said it in December to the team, I was like, I want to see how this goes before I buy into anything, because you've already got me on the outside feeling as far as my wanting to participate. I guarantee you now, I have no desire to participate. There's no loss to them. I'm sure they'll just say, whatever, who cares about that? But it is a loss because it's an athlete that is involved in the sport that doesn't want to participate. And that's a terrible sort of statement for someone to make and for a team to have to deal with.
It seems like it's, to me, a bigger issue than, the coach, or it seems like the whole program is built on a house of cards, right? Like nobody believes in anybody and nobody trusts anybody. And so where would you start to try to fix the problem? Because as an American that's not transferring to Canada, I think it's important to American eventing for Canada to be strong and, to have that international and that competition that's sort of natural and just because of our boundaries. And, I think competition is good for everybody, and Canada is a natural competitor to us. And so how would you make Canada better? Where would you start?
Well, look, I've thought about it a lot. I always have thought about it. It's always been very in my forefront. No matter what coach we've had, I've always, really evaluated the programs, the strengths and the weaknesses. And I did my first stint with a coach in 1986, and I've ridden not on a team with every coach, but I've ridden with every coach from that point till now. And I've watched the programs, and I love my country. And I will say that in this situation, they took the CEO out when David moved to America, or moved to the American team, and from that we migrated out and lost all the structure around him over time. It took a little while to do it, but it happened. So I think there's the first thing, is you have to have someone that draws in good people around you, and there are some good people in the program. I'm not saying that there's not a useful person. Every one of them actually has a lot of strengths, but it seems as though it doesn't fit well the way it is. And because of that, I personally think you have to go in, you have to dismantle the whole program. And I never have felt that way. I've always felt you always change components, but I think you take the structure that works in Canada, that can work in Canada, in a nation that is spread out, poorly represented with numbers. That doesn't mean they're not good enough, because some of those riders are great riders. Poorly represented with funding, which is the reality. We don't have the funding. Look at Bromont as a good example. We weren't even able to create enough funding to keep the interest alive to run the World Championships. Amateur sport in Canada is not that important unless you are a hockey player. So the funding is not great. That's fine too, because you can work with that. But you have to work with a lot of participation of volunteers. You have to work with a lot of participation of foresight. And due to that, I have like a sort of a list of structure that I wrote down, because I was like, well, if I was the coach, if I was running as a technical advisor, how would I do this? Not because I'm good enough to coach everybody, because it's not that. I think the problem is it doesn't come down to riding lessons. Riding lessons are involved, but you have to think of the structure that creates a strong nation. We're lacking in event quality at levels. We don't have an advanced event in the country other than Bromont. That's the first thing I would go in and change. I would do everything I could, and that sounds like, oh, well, what'd you do? I've already got a plan of how I'd work. That sounds like Donald Trump. But I had people actually commit to doing it a couple of years ago. But the problem is, again, it comes down to throwing yourself into something that already I'm putting out a lot of energy. And to do that, you would need people that would help create and run the system. Because although I'm very good at ideas, I recognize I'm not very good at actual organizing, and I can manage people pretty well, but I'm pretty bad about wanting to actually just say, well, this is how I'm going to do it. But you have to recognize your shortcomings as well. So I think in Canada, we need to create a system that the owners want to actually watch their horses, so that it's 10 years. This isn't a 3-year program. It's not a 2-year program. It's 10 years. You have to bring also the faith of the riders back to it. And I think that is hard, because when you bring in a coach, first, they got to understand that you have their back, and that you want it for them, and that you're going to stand behind them to help them succeed, and realize that you're not going to accept don't think Clayton's wrong in some of his thoughts, which is you can't be protecting your position on the team. You have to be riding to compete for your spot. I think he's absolutely right with that. But one of the huge things to me is there isn't one standard protocol that you run a horse by. Pavarotti runs different than Trust Fund. Trust Fund runs different than Madison Park. Madison Park runs different than Foxwood High. You run all of them, and you manage them all differently, because that is how you value your best results and team. And that hasn't happened here. It was a blanket statement of, this is how I want to see it, and everybody should run through these circles to make that happen. And again, if you're going to take charge of the program, then you have to be responsible for the whole program. And unfortunately, in this situation, we've lost better people than we needed, and some of them went to other countries, and we've lost the faith of some really good people. And we have to bring in, as much as we can, we have to bring in those people again, and we have to bring in some new people. And we have to bring Equine Canada to the realization that this program, our sport as a whole, is suffering not just due to the program, but it's suffering because there hasn't been a clear enough directive put forward. And I do think it takes a little bit of a dictator mentality in that way for the first probably 4 or 5 years to create it, but not a dictator for the riders, but a dictatorship for how the country needs to put their priorities to create a system that gets owners comfortable and happy and riders comfortable and happy. Because I got to think right now, there's a bunch of riders and supporters that don't want anything to do with this program. And it's a shame because it takes a long time in a nation like ours to build support. So I have given a lot of thought to it, but I do think, like Mark Phillips, one of the great things he did coming into America, like him or dislike him as a coach, like him or dislike him as how he managed the team. I mean, he was very successful. So I'm not saying this as a, that he was bad, but everybody has an opinion. They're welcome to it. He left this nation with better horse trials, better CICs, better competition, and he's still adding into that. This is in the United States. And because of that, this nation, where it used to be I could know every advanced rider in the country when I started going advanced, now there's people that have done 3 stars. I'm like, where'd that person come from? People are showing up at Rolex. I have no idea who they are, because this nation is stronger due to a much larger view than I'm going to teach a couple of upper level riders better lessons. And I think that is an example of how we have to change it in Canada. I mean, I really believe that.
I think you hit the nail on the head, because you guys had the success in, 2010 in Lexington. But let's face it, the regime that left the cupboards fairly bare, and there was no funding, and had used up everything that there was available, and even if it wasn't available, it had sort of mortgaged the future. And when there was nothing left, everybody left. And now you get chunked down this, here we go, we got nothing to offer, we don't have any money, we don't have any success, we don't have any foundation to stand on. And but here you go, and try to make something of it. And so some of the guys that were there when the cupboards weren't so bare were used to one way, and now there is not the same situation, and so it can be frustrating. And and I think what you're saying has great merit in that Mark really did do a good job of bringing the whole sport up from the bottom, where Canada over a long time. I mean, really, when they won the World Championships in 78, and it's really been sort of down from there. Then you guys hit silver at Lexington, but you'd mortgaged so much to get that done, and then there was nothing to come behind that and see it through. And by the time London was a complete disaster, and you left with absolutely no funding, you left with no coach, you left with, in my opinion, the brains of the whole operation. Graham Tom was so overqualified for that job that he was able to make a penny go forever. And I don't know how you get back to that spot, because I don't know how you. If I was going to be the coach of Canada, first phone call I'd make is to Graham and say, how do you fix this, dude? Can you come back and, not saying that because he's been a friend and somebody I've looked up to my whole life, but I've gained more respect for, he took something in Canada that had really nothing and made it go as far as it could go. And, he, in my eyes, he did his part, but the part that was missing is what you're talking about with Mark, where, that he brought a whole nation up. The problem with Canada is a little bit like being the coach of, Western Michigan University. That's a stepping stone, right? Everybody goes to Canada so they can go to someplace better. And until you find that person that makes Western Michigan University the Michigan, Canada's always going to be that. And so, if I was going to start it, I would, try to find somebody that was really invested in Canada, like you said, for a long, long time, and get somebody with the brains to make it happen.
Well, and I guess the other thing is you're very astute. Like Graham was a huge asset because the thing Graham did is he went in there with opinions, but then he discovered and read and learned how it all works. The problem with the problem with the team situation for Canada, though, and I said it when it was going on, is we had some decent funding. Then we got some exceptional funding after the Worlds. The problem is that it's funded in the rear view mirror, and there's not enough investment in where do we go forward. So right now, you take the top, Colleen Loach has a 10-year-old horse that, from what I understand, is being sold after the Olympics. Great. So there we go. We brought another horse up and it's being sold. I probably have one of my 10-year-olds on the market in this fall to help pay for the other one. And then I'll probably sell the other one if someone comes in. So again, we're losing ground. We're not gaining ground. I think you have to have them go forward. You have to think forward. You have to get people to commit. For me, it's been easier probably to sustain this because I did this when the cupboards were bare. I work for my income. I never thought about it any other way than the old school way of doing it in Canada. But the one thing when Graham was in there is he did his best to bring as much money in and make it last as long as possible, and then left it with a reservoir that got spent for one purpose. That purpose was reached, but in the using up of that reservoir of money, which it wasn't great, the situation has been squandered in the future for any forethought. We're using horses that were at the last Olympics. We're using horses that were at the last Worlds. That's great, but there is a huge gap below that right now. There's a great opportunity. If you're a good rider in Canada and you can ride moderately well in the next 2 years, you could be at the World Championships. And even if you shouldn't be there, and that's the problem, is we're not getting there. We're not building a platform of results, of wanting. And that's why I say that really I think that the plan I outlined for it would be 10 years in the future where you're looking for the success and realizing that you're going to give up some short-term goals. But there's the thing I really believe, and I said it in an interview the other day, you have to give up short-term goals sometimes for the long-term thought process, which means not taking Pavarotti to the Pan Ams last year, which means not running the horses all at Bromont like Jesse chose not to, which means multiple things that you might not want to do, but you might have to do. And that comes down to there comes one other point. Last year, and I am not taking away the performance from the Pan Ams last year, but what people need to understand is we lost a silver medal for the first time in 16 years. That, if you were in a normal sport, would be looked on as things are going the wrong way. Yet when the writing was on the wall and the riders weren't happy with it last fall, what was changed? Nothing. They elevated Clayton to another position, and things they said, you know what, we don't want to change anything for the Olympics because the Olympics is next year and we don't want to do it in the next 12 months. And I said to them at the time, and I wasn't invited to many of the meetings, I think because of this, and I was like, this is what you need to think is you'd rather someone thinking about how we get the best out of this than go, this is what we've been doing. It hasn't been working. We'll continue on this plan because at least this plan's in place. And I think that, again, coming to your point, finding someone that's qualified to take on Canada, finding someone that cares enough about the nation, finding someone that will go and step into that spot and give what needs to happen for what the pay is going to be a very difficult situation. And I think that is always a little bit the problem. Like you said, it's a stepping stone job. So people kind of take it. We've had coaches that were great coaches that never gave it the effort that it needed. And it's sad because it really has. We have great people. We have some very good horses, but we have some great people, some great riders, and there's a great opportunity there to make something happen. But I don't know if just, obviously because of the history I've had in it, it's easy for me to see it and go, well, this never worked or this didn't work. But Canada is a unique nation as well. But so is New Zealand. So is Australia. So is America. So is England. We can't compare how America does it to how Canada does it. What we have to do is say, how does Canada do it? How can Canada make this decision and make these efforts? And not everybody's going to be happy with it. But I think in any situation, you're going to have that. Nobody's ever thrilled with everything. It doesn't matter. You got to get thinking long term so that we leave a legacy, which is what is lacking from the previous, I think, program. We don't have a legacy from it. What we have is some better riders. And I think they're right there. We need a legacy. We need something that creates a historical moment in Canada, not a one moment in time, but a historical moment that creates the wheel that keeps things going. And right now, that's what's needed. But maybe going back completely to zero is the answer for it. Anyway, so I'd love to hear your response.
Sometimes just completely starting fresh and, know that you're going to lack for a little while and, just, get your core group and your foundation and, bring them up and, start at the young rider level and, try to bring people up and, but you got to bring, you got to teach them marketing. You got to teach them, everything about the sport. They've got to know how to do their entries. They've got to know how to do the fair. They know how to do the bet. Then they got to do everything. And as I say to my kids, so little of my life is about riding a horse. And I think that if the younger generation can realize that there's so much more that they have to do than just the X's and O's of riding, it's going to serve Canada better for years to come.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the thing is that at this moment, it's not like the conversation we're having isn't like, oh, this is a little fickle or this. There's always, I might have loved some things about every program I've been in and hated some things, but right now it's wow, there's not much you'd want to keep. So it's that simple in my mind. There's not much you'd want to keep. And I think most of the riders would say the same thing. And I will say this as well to those riders out there and a couple of you people that, come to me and go, oh, you know what, you should say this and you should do this. You can come on the show. We're happy to have you on. There's a couple of you out there that are actually quite powerful. And I've tried to get you on because you have thoughts that are very valid. But that's the other thing is in Canada, everybody's afraid to say it. Everybody's afraid to speak because they're worried about their positioning stuff. Okay, right now, I'm funded by Canada at the moment. I get $6,500 a year as a carded athlete. If me saying these things threatens that carding, you know what? Such is life. Because stuff has to be changed to make this better. It's just got to be addressed. And so as much as it's you don't want to miss on your spot on the team. And I'm not telling you to come out here and, berate everything. We're talking about trying to think of where it is and where it's got to go. And this is the country in the world right now that makes that happen. So, look, I think we need to wrap it up because I know we get a little bit lengthy. And look, I hope you guys appreciate and realize that these are views. These are opinions. They are not, some of the stuff actually is factual. The fact that the arbitrator felt strong enough to change the process for Jessie and put her on the team. He felt strong enough to make some very strongly worded comments about the conversations that went on at Bromont and the way things were handled. And and so I think it's a court of, it's not a court of law, it's a court of arbitration, but it was a lawyer and it was a judge. So these are people that actually understand the way these things are supposed to go. And it needs to, the reality is right there. You can keep hiding from it, but it's not going to, it needs to be changed. And my opinion is obviously out there. I'm happy to answer questions if you send them in. Buck's opinion is very valid because he's coming from a different situation in a different country, and he's got so much experience and knowledge. And, as you can see, he's haggard and old. So we hope you enjoyed it. We hope that, and I will say this for Canada, if you're interested in this, if you really believe in Canada, like I believe in Canada, if you believe in these riders, if you believe that this country could be something special, which it is already, but it's not showing up here, help figure it out. Don't come in and think you have all the answers, because I don't have all the answers. Nobody has all the answers, but come in and help. Try and help if you know riders that can be supported, that could make the future better. Not, oh, this one looks great at 16 years old because it's going to quit at 19. If you know someone that's producing horses, if you know people that can be supported, if you know events that can be supported, if you know that you can help course build, if you know things like that, so much can happen in our country because we are a volunteer nation. It is mocked a little bit from the American perspective, but it is what has allowed a lot of these successes to happen. So God, please help out making that happen. I mean, I don't care what it is. Give back. I mean, it's just that simple. Anyways, wrapping it up here, because God knows I'll end up in some other tangent here in a minute.
I was just going to let you keep going.
Yeah, thanks. You're supposed to hold me back.
Keep going, keep going.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, guys.